Alright, so today I'm going to feed some of my snakes live rodents, and I know it's a pretty controversial topic. As a matter of fact, some countries ban the feeding of live rodents to snakes, and there's a lot of pet stores that have a policy against it. You can't feed live mice to your snakes, and there's certain times in a ball python's life where you absolutely need to feed live rodents, and I would say that is when they first come out of the egg, and the very first meals that they have need to be live mice. And I remember the first year when I was getting into ball pythons, I had my hatchling rack with about 40 snakes, all ball python hatchlings, and I was trying everything to feed them. And it was a couple months that I was using the live rat pups and frozen thawed mice, frozen thawed rats. I was trying everything. I couldn't figure out what they would eat, and finally I saw on the internet, someone said, hey, try live mouse crawlers. So I went to the pet store, and it was pretty expensive buying 40 live mouse crawlers for my ball python hatchlings. But yeah, I tried it, and the very first time I tried it, all 40 snakes actually ate. And it was at that point I knew, all right, that is what ball python hatchlings need for the very first few meals. And usually what I do is I feed them probably, I'd say 3 or 4 meals of the live mouse hopper. Then I try to transition to a frozen thawed mouse. And then once they get about 6 meals into them, I pretty much transition to rats. And after 6 meals, they will eat anything live or frozen thawed, rat or mouse or anything. They really catch on pretty quick after that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you some of my live mice. I have 10 tubs of mice, and I don't have a whole bunch of mice, but I'll kind of show you the different sizes of mice and kind of what I use for the very first meal for some of these ball python hatchlings. Alright, so these are my rodent racks right here. I have 2 rows of mice on the top, just 10 tubs, and then the bottom over here I have a bunch of rats, and then over here, all of these over here, these are all rats as well. So I just have just a few mice, and it's just to feed my brand new ball python hatchlings. So let's take a look. I think what I'll do is I'll just start pulling tubs, and I'll kind of show you what I have. Let me show you my most crowded tub right here. This one is, so these mice are actually too big for ball python hatchlings. The funny thing is I've never really had mice jump out of the tub. Hopefully these won't jump out. And these, what I'm using them for, these are my replacement mice that I'm going to use to replace all my breeders in my rack. So essentially all my breeders are getting way too old, and I need to go through and replace them all. And then these right here, I have a whole bunch in here, and essentially what these are is kind of the hoppers that I'm going to euthanize and freeze. And you see the mom right here is really big, and before she lays any more babies, what I need to do is thin out all these, and this is pretty much the size that I euthanize and put in the freezer. I euthanize with CO2, and these really, I think they're, some of them are probably, the smaller ones are probably a good size, like maybe this one, but the problem is this is kind of like a runt because it's like a more mature mouse, and it's I'm thinking it might actually bite the snake. Even the small ones, they're older. I think the problem is the females don't really have enough milk to nurse all these mice because the females are getting really old. And I'm just going to use these to put in the freezer, and then I feed them later as the snakes get a little bit older. So in here, what I have right here in this tub, these are some of the ones I need to retire because they are getting really old. Some of these are, you can tell, some of the females, they tend to look pregnant, and then they're not pregnant. And then the litter size, you notice here, these are definitely too small for ball python hatchlings, but you can tell the litter size is really small with these older mice. So what I need to do is I need to replace all these with some of the ones from the other tub that I'm growing up as replacements. So take a look at this one. So these are almost to the point where, they're getting a little bit bigger. They're getting some good size to them, but they're still not big enough. I like them with a little fuzz on them. And you can see these guys need to be replaced too. They're getting really big and really old. This is like a really old male right here. And I just need to go through and, you know, the mice only live about a year, so you figure, you know, it's you know, after a year and, you know, a couple months, then they get way too old. So this tub, you can definitely tell these are extremely old mice. These I need to replace and swap out with the other ones. And the way you can tell is they're really big and chunky. And look at this, the litter size is only 2. Then if you take a look at these are super runts. they should not look like that, and it's because the female isn't really young enough to nurse them properly, and there's only 2 in there, so I really need to replace them. And I also noticed that one of them kind of has a growth. If you look at this one, it kind of has a little cancerous growth right on the side, which is, you know, especially in rats and mice, if you try to keep them to the very end of their life where, you know, they're super old, a lot of times they will actually, they'll actually get cancer and stuff like this. So take a look at these. So these are really old mice as well, but there's just a few, and you can tell they've been nursing really good. So this size right here is for me, this is the ideal size right here. It still has its eyes closed, so it's not running around like it's gonna bite somewhat, like it'll bite a snake, and it's perfectly harmless. So what I like to do is I like to take them this size. This is this is perfect. This is what I call a mouse crawler, essentially. And I can put that in there with the snake and leave it pretty much overnight, and there's no risk at all of that snake getting hurt from that one. So there's like 5 of them. So probably what I'll do is I'll use these 5 for the snakes. And I have like 20 snakes, so I'll probably move them from one tub one night, and then I'll move them back in here so the mom can nurse them a little, and then the next day move them back to the next 5 snakes and kind of cycle them through that way. So that is pretty much the ideal size for the very first meal. And then you can actually move up to a bigger size once the snake gets a little bit bigger and once it gets a few meals in them. And these, you can tell, these, you know, these are, some of them, your mice get big and fat, and they pretty much get to the point where they're unproductive. So in this tub, it kind of fools you because they look like they're pregnant. You know, they get nice and fat, and it'll fool you because this mouse looks pregnant, but it's just really old, and it has a lot of fat reserves instead of a lot of babies in the tummy. You kind of got to watch the tails putting these guys in a little bit. So in this one, I actually had a problem with the water nozzle. I'm ordering all new water nozzles to kind of fix that problem. And then this one, here's one more tub. We'll just kind of go through these tubs. So these look like they're nursing really well, and you can see it's a pretty big litter size, but these are still really old rats. You can tell they're really big. They all really need to be replaced because they're getting really old. But, you know, I would actually wait probably, you know, a week or so on those before I actually fed them to the snakes. And mice grow incredibly fast. If you think about the growth rate of mice, you know, they only live a year. We live 100 years. So every day to a mouse is like 100 days to us. So this is actually some of the ones that I'm growing up as replacements. You can see the older ones here. This is one of the older ones here that I'm replacing, and I'm replacing them with some of the younger ones in here. So I was kind of working on this tub as some replacements, and then I decided to just have that whole other tub as replacements and just go through and replace the whole thing. So that's kind of my situation with the mice. Alright, so from here, essentially what I'll do is I'll take these 5 mice and I just put them in a little deli cup, and I just pop them right in with these snakes. And these snakes haven't actually even shed yet. Let me get this light over so you can see it a little bit better. And normally what you do is you kind of wait until the snake is shed, but these mice are totally harmless. And what I'll do is, you can see it's a pretty good size mouse. And I'm not even sure if this one will take that live mouse or not. Maybe. Maybe. And the only thing is, you want to just kind of check to make sure the mouse doesn't fall in the water. That's the one thing. So So essentially what I'll do is I'll just kind of close it up, put the mouse in, close it up, and that's it. And then this one, essentially just the same thing. Grab a mouse, throw it in there, and that's it, you're done. And then what I do is I usually put the little clips like this. I'll put a clip on the right, and then if it eats, I'll move it to the middle. So I'll put clips on the right on both of these, and then I'll come back tomorrow morning. If they've eaten, I'll move it to the middle, and then what I do is I kind of keep track of how many clips, and then once it has 6 clips in the middle, what I do is I put a little sticker on here that says, yes, this snake ate 6 rodents. And you can see they're all kind of getting ready to go into shed here. And I'm just gonna throw a mouse in, and that's it, and then put a clip over on the right. And I have five little mice here. Let's see if I can grab one. I'll just throw it in there. Some people use a little bit bigger of a mouse for the first one, but I like to keep them pretty small. And then this one, these are all kind of ready to shed, but they're definitely, you know, some snakes will definitely eat when they're before they shed for the first time. So that is pretty much it. That's all I do for feeding my snakes mice for the very first time. All right, so there you have it. Some might say that I fed those snakes a little bit early because they're going into shed. And, you know, typically I think most people, what they do is they wait till the snake comes out of the egg and it sheds for the first time before they offer food. But I've had quite a few snakes that'll eat during a shed, especially if you're throwing in live mice. And really it's you know, you want to get as much food into the snake as soon as possible. What is this snake doing? Oh, this crazy snake. all right. Oh, this crazy snake. So, you know, I've actually had snakes that'll fast for a couple months, and at that point you really have to assist feed a snake. So it's always best to try to feed as soon as possible so you can offer and get food into that snake before it gets too far down the road where you actually have to assist feed a snake. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. You know, for me, I really like to go for the right rodent size. Look at this snake. I don't know what the snake is doing. I like to go for the right rodent size. And, you know, some people would argue that I could actually use a rodent that is twice as big as those that I was feeding. And you could, but then you have the potential of the rodent fighting back and potentially hurting the snake. And I'd rather, especially, you know, if I'm going with live mice or even live rats, I prefer as small as possible, you know, that, you know, the snake can definitely win when it comes to, you know, snake versus rat in the tub. So it's kind of what I'm thinking as far as, you know, and after they eat a few live, it's no problem going to a bigger rodent, especially if you go to like a frozen thawed or a fresh kill. I would probably do twice that big if I was offering fresh killed or a frozen thawed. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.